Hello, hello, you big, beautiful world, and all you beautiful people that reside upon it. Welcome to the podcast, Brothers of Many Words. I am your host, RP.
I am co-host King Mackey.
How's everybody doing out there today? Can you kick us off with some affirmation, a beautiful affirmation to get us settled on in this thing?
I got you. The affirmation for Brother Meaning Words is we stand together as brothers, united in purpose and grounded in respect. We move with love, speak with clarity, and carry peace. No ego, no division, only growth. Each voice matters. Together, we build something greater. We are aligned. We are ready. Peace in our energy, power in our unity, and purpose in our message. It is done.
It is done. Absolutely. So, the purpose of the podcast is to create a space for open, honest, and thought provoking discussions across a wide range of subjects. Through the reading of books, articles, and shared knowledge, we engage in dialogue that allows us to explore ideas, challenge perspectives, and deepen our understanding. This platform is built on discussion, review, and respectable debate, where growth is the goal and learning is continuous. As we evolve through each conversation, we not only enlighten ourselves, but we also invite others to join us on this journey of awareness, insight, and transformation. Together, we seek the truth, expand perspective, and build something meaningful. One conversation at a time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How'd your week go, King?
Week was wonderful. Wonderful. Beautiful week this week. Took the kids to the park a couple times this week.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, me and wifey worked out at the park several times. We had a wonderful week. How about yourself?
It's been beautiful too as well. You know, it's with kids in school, it's always a beautiful chaos, ripping and running here and there, and
Mm-hmm.
this and that and the other. But I wouldn't have it any other way. You know,
I
sometimes
do agree.
I can't imagine my life without them. It's so
I do
strange.
agree.
There was a time when they were not here. It's like, what did I do? What did I do?
Right. Yeah. I had a brother of mine, he reached out to me. He's about to have a baby here in a few months. And he was just talking about the preparation and all that. And I said, well, you know what? Wait till you get ready to try to go to work or leave the house and one child has your shoes, the other one takes off with your sock, your belt, and you got to go through a scavenger hunt throughout the house to find your belongings. Just to leave the house or to hold on to your legs.
Oh man, that's the tough part right there. That's the tough part right there for sure.
That is a tough part. Yeah.
My goodness. Yep. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit of words of inspiration right now. Bring a little bit of positivity into your day. So it goes, live like a star, formed under pressure, moving with purpose, and shining despite the darkness around you. Life becomes successful not when you escape struggle, but when you turn pain into wisdom, setbacks into direction, and existence into meaning. Like the cosmos, your journey is vast, mysterious, and unfolding in perfect time. Trust your path, honor your growth, and remember that your light was never meant only for you, but to inspire warmth, wonder, and hope in others as well.
You know, that's amazing. I don't think we understand how we impact the people around us on an everyday basis.
Absolutely, basis. You know, that's something too that, especially if you're not aware of that, you know, your words truly have meaning, you know, and how they impact somebody else, especially if it's somebody that is close to you, you know, and you know, a lot of times we're not aware of that. But I try to make myself aware of that because, especially with my children, you can say this, the little thing which you think is insignificant, then you turn around and there's tears coming down their face, and it's like, dang, what I say?
Yes. Yeah, I do agree. We look forward to getting out the house and you know, interacting with other people and just putting a smile on their face. You know, again, because you just, you know, I have this story. My mom, I love my mom. Right? She might get mad at me about this story, but my mom's 4'0" and she's kind of a road rager. You know, she lives in Texas, so traffic just a little bit different out there than it is here in Missouri. But you know, I always mess with her because you know, you say you're driving on the highway and this car speeds past you and cuts you off, and for some people, you automatically just get upset and start using foul language. But not knowing that this young lady got off work late because the person who was supposed to relieve her was late, you know, and then now her child's at the daycare center And if you're late at the daycare instead of picking your child after 6, there's fees to that. There's late fees to that. And just consider that she only has $100 to last her the rest of the week, when that means for food and for gas. So she's trying to get to the daycare to retrieve her child before the daycare charges her any fee. I mean, it's just a lot that goes with that. And here we are, condemning this person for something that they did. And yeah, it could have caused an accident, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But man, life just has so much more meaning. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? And even when I see somebody on the side of the road and their car broke down, I simply say something just into the universe and say, hey, just protect them. Because I know how it feels to be sitting on the side of the road with
That's
overheating or something,
I do that same thing as well. And so it goes into try to be try to be aware. You don't know, but you just don't know what everybody else is going through. So
True.
you can lead with a little bit of patience. It can certainly help the situation. But I do that as well. When I see somebody broke just a little bit, I see them broke down on the side of the road, I say something. I say something for them, because you just never know. I've been there.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, if I can pull over, I definitely would. But if I can, I definitely say so. But you and me both. I've been there and been in the middle of the road, sweating, pushing my car, and nobody stopped to say anything. You know what I mean? Or even offer any type of assistance.
Yes.
So I look to do that these days for sure.
I was I was traveling back and forth from Oregon to Texas, and one time I got a flat tire in Arizona, and Arizona's wide open spaces. So it was like 2:00 in the morning on the side of the road, going up a hill, and there was no, some freeways you got a lot of room.
Right.
I had no room, so I'm trying to change this tire with these 18-wheelers flying by. Yeah, man. Listen, it took me some time to get that. Hey, listen, those lug nuts that are on those tires, when they put those lug nuts on.
Yes, they do. Yes, I know where you're going. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yes.
You talk about frustration in the middle of the night in the desert.
Yes.
I'm trying to take out these dang lug nuts.
Hey, that's a Tuesday night question. How many new age or Generation Z? First of all, do they still teach you how to change a tire in these when you're getting your permit for your for the drive? Because I know that was a requirement. But I've heard through the grapevine that a lot of these new gens don't know how to change a tire. You know what I mean? And so I'm curious to know that. I don't. My youngest are on their way, and I have a 10-year-old next. But I still got about 6 years to find that out, unless otherwise. But I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know.
That's right. Hey, unless you got one of them hydraulic guns, it is no easy task to take those things.
Right.
Listen, I had one of those four I forget what it's called, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I
Got
do.
different sides on each side.
Yes.
Man, I'm
Yes.
jumping on that thing like, look,
Yes.
it's like,
Yes.
golly, these 18 wheels, I mean, they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, bro. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was a wild scene, but that made an impression on me for dang sure.
Yes,
Cool.
sir. Yes, sir.
All right. The purpose of the podcast. This topic is the origins of Africa, a subject that is not only historical but deeply powerful, passionate, and alive with meaning. Africa is widely recognized as the cradle of humanity, the birthplace of Homo sapiens, where all modern human life began. Every person walking this earth could trace their lineage back to this continent, supported by overwhelming genetic, fossil, and archaeological evidence. This is not just history, this is origin. This is identity. This is truth at its deepest level. And because of that, the conversation carries weight. It carries energy. It may challenge perspectives, ignite passion, and even spark debate. But that is where growth lives. We approach this topic with respect, with curiosity, and with the understanding that knowledge of origin is knowledge of self. So today, we open the door to a discussion that is as enlightening as it is powerful, because to understand where we come from is to better understand who we are. And we are covering the book, The Ancient Kingdom of Africa, and it's the Charles Rivers Editors production. Good book. It's a very good book. This is part 4 of it. The last part of what we'll be covering of this book. But it is really good. A lot of information in there, and we love to bring it to you. So, with that being said, let's get into it, King. Let's get into it.
So on this great day, our brother King Christopher is absent. He will be back with us on Tuesday. So I will be reading his part and going over his notes today. Okay, so based upon the book, his part is Persia, Libya, and Alexander. Conquest is not enough. Okay, so Persia under Sabaces the second pushed west after taking Egypt, looking for Libya, Syrian, Barsa, and Siwa. Some groups submit, some send tribute, but the deeper point is that claiming territory and actually controlling it are two different things. You can put a place on your map, you can write it in your records, and still never truly possess it. And that's exactly what we see with the Persian move on Siwa. Cambyses sends men into the desert toward Ammonius, and they disappeared, swallowed by the sands. Whether every detail is literal or not, the message is clear. Empires can conquer cities, but they can't always conquer terrain, culture, or the spiritual power people attach to a place. Okay. Then Alexander shows up and changes the whole game. Changes the whole game. I ain't a big fan of Alexander. They call him Alexander the Greek. I call him Alexander the Greek, but anyway, he comes in with a military force, wins battle after battle, breaks down Persia, and eventually moves into Egypt. But what makes Alexander different is that he understood something that most conquerors did not. The sword might open a gate, but the symbolism is what keeps it open. Egypt didn't resist him in the way they did others. Alexander knew how to use his position. He goes to Siwa, gets recognized by the Oracle of Ammon, is affirmed as legitimate, then gets crowned in Memphis in Egypt's tradition. That wasn't just politics. That was strategic. He understood that if you want power to last, you just can't rule over people. You have to speak to what they believe. And then he builds Alexandria, not just another city, but a future center of power, trade, culture, and identity. That's really the lesson here. The Persians had military power, tribute, and control on paper, but struggled with their real legitimacy. Alexander came in with force, but he also understood the image, and ritual, and local meanings. And that's the real difference between occupation and legacy. All right. Powers that only dominate eventually fades, but the power that learns how to speak the language of the people, their faith, their symbolism, and their worldview has a much better chance to survive historically. So, Chris has our question for today. And our question is, what made Alexander more successful than the Persians in Egypt? His military strength, his ability to use Egyptian religion, and political symbolism.
Well, it was the way Alexander presented himself. He respected Egyptian traditions, as you were just stating, accepted coronation as pharaoh, sacrificed Egyptian gods, and went to the oracle of Siwa, where he was linked to Amun. This mattered because in Egypt, kingship was not only political, it was sacred. So Alexander did not try to rule Egypt only as a Macedonian conqueror. He stepped into the religious and symbolic role Egyptians already understood as legitimate kingship. The Persians had military power too, and some Persian rulers like Darius the First did make efforts to respect Egyptian religion and law. So the difference was not that the Persians had no strength or no policy at all. The deeper difference is that Alexander arrived at a moment where Persian authority was already weakened, and he was better at turning conquest into acceptance. He made himself look like the restorer of rightful order instead of simply another empire taking control. So if I had to choose which mattered more in the long run, I would say that symbolism mattered more because armies, as you stated, can conquer land, but symbolism helps convince people that the ruler belongs there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would totally agree. I'm with you. I would say that it's both. The symbolism is what made his military victory stick.
Mm-hmm.
The Persians had already shown that armies could take Egypt, which you just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, but they were not loved by the Egyptians. So Alexander came in military credibility, but then
Mm-hmm.
he allowed himself to be recognized through Egyptian traditions, which is, like you said, which is very strong.
Absolutely.
Um, and then being proclaimed legitimate, and then being crowned in Memphis, it set him up. It set him up.
Yep.
So there we go. There we go. Set him up perfectly on that. All right. So moving on to topic number 2. Ptolemy the First Soter, the man who turned Alexander's legacy into a throne. So what stands out in this section is that Alexander dies, and the real battle is no longer just about who has the strongest army. It becomes about who can control the story.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander dies young without a clear successor. At that creates chaos. His generals, the Daiachi,
Do your
start
best.
start dividing the empire, and Ptolemy takes Egypt. On paper, Egypt was one of the best prizes. They were wealthy, fertile, full of grain, gold, and ancient prestige. But taking Egypt and keeping Egypt were two different things. What made Ptolemy dangerous wasn't just military strength; it was that he understood power psychologically. Which, while the other generals fought for land, Ptolemy secured Alexander's body. And in the world, Alexander's body was more than a corpse. It was authority, it was symbolism and legitimacy. Ptolemy understood that if you control Alexander's image, you can control part of his power. So that was a real move. From there, Ptolemy didn't just rule Egypt, he reinvented himself for Egypt. He takes on phonetic tides, embraces Egypt's religious traditions, ties himself to Alexander's legacy, and presents himself not only as a foreign occupant, but as the righteous owner of Egyptian kingship. Man, man. So that's what made him different, right? Ptolemy understood that forces can take a throne, but legitimacy is what keeps it. He wasn't just building government; he was building belief. And that's why his dynasty didn't just survive Alexander's death. It became one of the most powerful and recognized dynasties in the ancient world. So our question today, based upon Chris, was Ptolemy a successful, or Ptolemy the First successful mainly because he was a strong ruler, or because he understood the power of controlling Alexander's image and Egyptian tradition?
Yeah. Yeah. So Ptolemy the First was successful because he was both a strong leader and a master of symbolism. If I had to choose, I would say he was especially successful because he understood that power in Egypt had to look legitimate, not
Mm-hmm.
just forceful. He was a capable political and military leader who secured Egypt after Alexander's death, as you mentioned, and it turned
Right.
into the base of a new dynasty. But he also knew that in Egypt, ruling was not just about winning control, it was about convincing people that he had the right to rule. What made him especially clever was the way he tied himself into Alexander's legacy and to the
Right.
Egyptian tradition at the same time. He took possession of Alexander's body and buried it at first at Memphis, which strengthened his connection to Alexander's memory and prestige. At the same time, he followed the pattern Alexander had already laid set Egypt by respecting Egyptian religion, kingship traditions, and the Ptolemaics worked hard to blend Greek rule with the Egyptian political and religious symbolism. Ptolemy the First did not succeed only because he was strong enough to hold Egypt. He succeeded because he understood that lasting rule needed more than soldiers. It needed image, tradition, and legitimacy. In that sense, his real genius was not just taking power, but in making foreign rule feel established, meaningful, and believable inside the Egyptian world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So he didn't just conquer a position; he made the position look natural,
Mm-hmm.
sacred, and historically connected.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Definitely.
he's seen what Alexander had done and followed the
He
same
did.
path.
He did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. All right, so we have topic number 3. The early Ptolemies and Ptolemaic Egyptian culture, building a hybrid civilization. What stands out in this section is that under Ptolemy the Second and Ptolemy the Third, Egypt was no longer just surviving after Alexander; it was becoming something new. Ptolemy the First laid the foundation, but Ptolemy the Second and Third turned Egypt into one of the most powerful and advanced kingdoms in the ancient world. Alexander became the center of it all, politically, economically, and culturally. You get the lighthouse, you get the library, major trade routes, banking, coinage, and infrastructure that made Egypt not just strong militarily, but powerful through commerce, knowledge, and influence. And that's the real point here. An empire isn't just built by war. It's built by roads, ports, money, trade, and ideas. So what makes this period so important is that Ptolemy wasn't just a ruling Egypt. They created a hybrid civilization, Greek administration, Egyptian in symbolism and international trade and intellectual ambition. That's what made Ptolemaic Egypt different. It wasn't fully Greek. It wasn't purely Egyptian. It was something new, a blended civilization built on power, culture, religion, and strategic matters. And even with its contradictions, that fusion is what made Ptolemaic Egypt one of the most influential kingdoms in the ancient world. So our question is, was Ptolemaic Egypt a successful blend of Greek and Egyptian culture, or was it Greek ruling class using Egyptian traditions to maintain control?
So, excuse me. Ptolemaic Egypt was both a cultural blend and a system of control. But if I had to go one way, I would say that it was more a Greek ruling class using Egyptian tradition to hold power. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt as Macedonian Greeks, kept Greek at the center of the court and bureaucracy, and built Alexandria into a powerhouse of Greek culture. At the same time, they presented themselves as pharaohs, supported Egyptian temples, and used Egyptian religious symbolism because they understood that Egyptian tradition gave their rule legitimacy. That said, it would be, I guess, too easy to call it fake on one side. A real cultural mixing did happen. Egyptian religion remained strong. Greek and Egyptian gods were identified with one another. New codes like Serapis were created. Egyptian language and literature continued, and some Egyptians learned Greek and adapted to the new elite world. So it's not a case of one culture completely replacing the other. It was more like two cultures living side by side, influencing each other, but not sharing power equally. Ptolemaic Egypt was a selective blend, culturally mixed in visible ways, but politically unequal underneath. Greek rulers borrowed Egyptian traditions because those traditions were powerful and ancient, and they needed them to make foreign rule feel lawful, sacred, and stable. In that sense, Ptolemaic Egypt was a genuine fusion in religion, art, and public symbolism. But it was still largely a Greek led state that used Egyptian civilization as a foundation for its own authority.
Yes, yes, yes. So as far as the answers based upon Chris, he thinks it was both. So the Ptolemies genuinely preserved and supported many Egyptian traditions, like you mentioned, temples and religious practices. But they were also using traditions to strengthen their own authority as foreign rulers. Alexander was deeply Greek, while the borderland remained heavily Egyptian. So the culture was a real blend, like you just stated, but it was not an equal blend. It was a hybrid civilization built through both respect and political strategies.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Very good, King.
Yes,
keep it going. So I covered chapters Alexandria, the decline of the Ptolemies, the last Ptolemies, and Axum in the ancient world. So my first bullet point: Egypt's place in the world was beginning to diminish. How did Alexandria, Ptolemy the fourth, Philopator, from 221 to 204 BCE, Rome's influence on Egypt during this period, and Ptolemy the 12th helped further diminish Egypt's power. So Alexandria made Egypt famous, but it also pulled Egypt in a more Greek and Mediterranean direction. It became the most important city in the Eastern Mediterranean and a major trade of centers, science, literature, and philosophy. Ptolemy the Fourth, Philopator, helped start the real political decline. He won a major victory at Raphia in 217 BCE, but was considered a weak ruler. Egypt's overseas influence began to decline. Rome's influence weakened Egypt because Rome increasingly acted like the power behind the house. Roman leaders began deciding who ruled Egypt, intervened in succession disputes, backed certain rulers while removing others. Ptolemy the 12th made the situation worse by depending heavily on Rome to stay king. He relied on Roman support and bribery, including figures like Julius Caesar. Egypt became financially drained and politically dependent. So Egypt's power was fading because its center of gravity had shifted. Alexandria made Egypt rich, famous, and intellectually powerful, but it also made the kingdom more Greek centered and less connected to older Egyptian unity. Ptolemy the Fourth Philopator weakened the state through poor leadership, internal revolt, and loss of territory. At the same time, Rome kept gaining influence by interfering in succession and treating Egypt like a kingdom it could control from the outside. Under Ptolemy XII, that dependence became even worse because he relied on Roman money, Roman approval, and even Roman soldiers to stay on the throne. So Egypt did not simply fall because of one event. It slowly lost its independence until Rome had more to say over Egypt's future than Egypt itself. So, my first question: how can a civilization become more brilliant culturally while becoming weaker politically?
Yeah, so I would have to say that a civilization can grow stronger culturally even while its political power declines because the culture often outlives the empire. Political systems depend on military strength, stable leadership, and the control of resources, but culturally is carried through ideas, religions, language, art, and memory, and songs and hymns. The Axum's case, even as this trade power weakened, and its political influence declined, its cultural influence continued through religion, agriculturally, language, and tradition. That shows that a civilization, deepest legacy is often not its armies or its territory, but what it teaches the world and how the world survives off of that.
I'll just add to that, because you mentioned it teaches that brilliance alone does not guarantee survival.
Right.
A nation may produce knowledge, beauty, and prestige, but if its political foundation grows fragile, that brilliance can become a mask over deeper decline. Deep decline. Okay. Let's see. Number two. Bullet point number two. From 69 BCE to 30 BCE, Cleopatra VII, Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and Octavian shared this time period. The relationships that were formed between the four were powerful and also quite tragic. What impact did they have on Egyptian and Roman civilizations going forward? So, Cleopatra tried to save Egypt from alliances with powerful men in Rome, but those same alliances tied Egypt's fate to Rome's civil wars.
Right.
Caesar helped restore her power. Antony tried to build a future with her, and Octavian destroyed that future. Because of that, Egypt went from being an independent kingdom to a Roman possession, and Rome went from a republic torn by rivalry to an empire ruled by one man. Cleopatra VII, Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and Octavian turned a personal struggle for love, loyalty, and power into a civilized turning point for both Egypt and Rome. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar helped her regain her throne and temporarily preserve Egypt's independence. At the same time, that alliance pulled Egypt deeper into Rome's internal power struggles.
Right.
After Caesar's death, Cleopatra's alliance with Mark Antony gave Egypt one last chance to remain powerful in the Eastern Mediterranean. But that same alliance made Egypt the direct target of Octavian's rise. When Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra at Actium and took Egypt in 30 BCE, Egypt lost its independence. The Ptolemaic dynasty ended, and Egypt became a part of Rome. Egypt's political story as a sovereign kingdom ended while Rome's imperial story truly began. Cleopatra became the last active ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt. Antony's fall marked the collapse of one of the last major alternatives to Octavian, and Octavian's victory made him master of the Roman world. Just a clip note to that, Octavian's victory over them helped clear the way for him to become Augustus, the first Roman emperor. So, my question is, how can personal relationships between rulers change the fate of entire civilizations?
Yeah, man. So I would say personal relationships between leaders can redirect the course of history because of trust, influence, and mentorship, often shaping decisions more than institutions do. So one relationship affecting state, religion, diplomacy, identity, and the future of Ethiopian civilization. This shows that history is not only shaped by wars and economics, but by the leaders who trust enough to guide their thinkers or guide their citizens. Yes, sir.
Uh, it teaches also that private choices made by, as you were saying, by private people can have public consequences far beyond themselves. What begins as a personal alliance can become a national turning point, and what seems like an intimate bond can end up redirecting the course of history. And that is evidently proved by those relationships right there. Okay,
Absolutely.
bullet point number 3. The great African ancient kingdom of Axum in the ancient world. So, excuse me, the kingdom of Axum was one of the greatest ancient African civilizations. Its main time period, excuse me, ran from about the 1st century CE to the 8th century CE. Its strongest period was between the 3rd and 6th century CE. Axum became powerful because of its strategic position between the Ethiopian highlands, the Red Sea trade routes, connected trade between Africa, Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean world.
Yes, sir.
Axum was not just rich from trade, but a true empire. Had strong leaders and a central capital at Axum. Developed its own coins, writing system. Important kings of Axum included Izana in the 4th century, expanded the kingdom, made Christianity the state religion, and Khalid, 6th century CE, extended power across the Red Sea into Yemen, showed Axum's international influence. Axum was a great African kingdom because it had the right location, strong kings, control of trade, political organization, religious influence, and a lasting cultural identity. It stands as one of the clearest examples of Africa producing a civilization that was powerful, connected to the wider world, and deeply rooted in its own land at the same time. So my question is, what does Axum's adoption of Christianity suggest about the role of belief in shaping civilization?
Man, Axiom's adoption of Christianity suggests that belief is not just spiritual, it's also civilizational. Belief systems shape laws, identity, morality, education, and political legitimacy. Christianity gave Axum a unifying worldview, strengthening the authority of its rulers, connecting it to border internationally networks, and help preserve its legacy long after its political decline. This shows that belief can become one of the strongest organizations or organized forces in the civilization because it gives people meaning, unity, and continuity.
Very good,
Sure.
very good. That's right. It also shows that civilizations are not built only on economics or military strength. They are also shaped by ideas that hold sacred. Belief gives a civilization meaning, continuity, and a sense of purpose beyond survival. Great, great. And I got it. So today I have a bonus point, if you will, So Alexander the Great, or the Greek of Macedonia, envisioned a great city between the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Mareotis called Alexandria. What impact did it have on the ancient world in regard to its influence, stature, and knowledge? So, Alexandria became one of the most important cities in the ancient world because it was built to be more than just a city. It was designed to be a gateway between Egypt and the wider Mediterranean world, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE. It grew into one of the largest and most influential cities in the Hellenistic age. Its location allowed it to connect sea trade, Nile River traffic, routes leading toward the Red Sea and to the east. Its statue came from the fact that it was not only rich and strategic, but also prestigious. Alexandria became the capital of Ptolemaic Egypt, served as a symbol of royal ambition, culture, global importance. Featured the Pharaoh's lighthouse, which you mentioned, one of the seven wonders in the ancient world. The lighthouse symbolized wealth, confidence,
Right.
international standing. Its greatest impact, though, was in knowledge. Alexandria became famous as a center of learning, especially through the Library of Alexandria and the Museum, where scholars studied literature, mathematics, science, geography, and philosophy. In that sense, Alexandria did not just store knowledge, it helped organize, expand, and spread it. So its influence in the ancient world was threefold. It was powerful in trade, unmatched in prestige, and legendary as a center of scholarship. So my question I pose to this is, what does Alexandria reveal about the connection between ambition and legacy?
I kind of want to say something too, and I'll answer your question. So Alexandria was already a library, was already a massive library before, the Ptolemy empire or dynasty came about. And then once the empire, it was taken, Egypt was taken over. Now its library was expanded based upon the Greek knowledge. You see, they were able to write and understand the Egyptians because then they actually had access to the library. But prior to that, there was no access to the library. You know what I mean? Alexandria, because it was considered the mysteries. So it was something that was sacred to people. And so that's why we're seeing now the expansion of Egypt and its knowledge into Greek philosophy or the administration period, because now they had the true knowledge of Egypt.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah. So, but to answer your question, Alexander reveals that ambition can build greatness, but legacy depends on what is preserved. Alexander was born on Alexander's ambition to create a city that would unite power, trade, and knowledge and culture. The ambitions made Alexandria one of the greatest intellectual centers in the ancient world, which I believe was already there. To the famous library and the symbol of learning and influence. Yet, Alexandria also shows that even the greatest achievements are vulnerable to time, conflict, and neglect. His ambitions built brilliance, but his legacy endured not because everything survived, but because his vision of knowledge, scholarship, and global exchange continue to inspire the world. Alexandria teaches that ambition builds monuments, but legacy is what remains when the monuments fall.
I'm gonna add to that, King, then I'll let you have it. I'll let you have it. So also, that was good. So from a philosophical standpoint, is ambition can become legacy when it creates something that serves humanity beyond the moment of its creation. Ambition focused only on conquest fades quickly, but ambition that builds institution, culture, and knowledge can echo throughout history.
Yeah. All right. So my part in the book is the emergence of Axum. All right. So in the final section of the Ancient African Kingdom by Charles River editors, the rise of Axiom is presented as the emergence of one of Africa's most powerful and influential ancient kingdoms. Located in what is now Ethiopia, Axum grew into a dominant political and economic center by controlling the Red Sea trade routes and connecting Africa, Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean. Its strategic position allowed it to prosper through commerce in gold, ivory, incense, and enslaved labor, while its rulers built monumental statues, minted coins, and established a highly organized state. So the book emphasizes Axiom's transformation to a major imperial power through trade, military expansion, and religious influence. Axiom became one of the few African civilizations to mint its own currency, a sign of economic sophistication, and international influence. It also became one of the earliest kingdoms in the world to adopt Christianity as a state religion in the 4th century CE, which helped shape its identity and connection to the wider Christian world. This conversation distinguishes Axiom's political and cultural meaning, making it one of the most important Christian kingdoms of iniquity. The closing portion of the book focuses on Axiom's decline and legacy. As Islamic powers rose across Arabia and North Africa, Axiom's control of the Red Sea trade began to weaken. combined with environmental strain and shifting trade networks and internal weakening or weakness. The kingdom gradually declined. Though its political dominance faded, Axum's culture and religion's legacy endured through Ethiopian civilization, especially in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. Monumental statues and its role as one of Africa's greatest classical civilizations. This book ends by framing Axiom not only as a lost civilization, but as a foundation of African knowledge whose influence survived long after the decline. All right, that was my summary. So let me go. Here is one of my bullet points here. Axiom rose to power through trade and geography. Aksum became wealthy and powerful because it controlled major trade routes linking Africa to Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean, making it one of the most important commercial kingdoms in the ancient world. My question is, how did Aksum's location help it become one of the richest kingdoms in the ancient Africa?
Axum became one of the richest kingdoms in ancient Africa because it was sitting in the right place at the right time. It was based in the highlands of what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, but it also had access to the Red Sea, as you mentioned, through the port of Adulis. That meant it could connect the African interior to trade coming from Arabia, India, Egypt, and the Mediterranean world. Its location gave it two big advantages. The first one was the highlands gave Axum a strong inland base with people, resources, and political security. Second, its Red Sea access let it become a middleman in international trade, which is where a lot of its wealth came from. Merchants moved goods like ivory, gold, and other valuable products through Axum, and that made the kingdom powerful. Axum got rich because it was able to stand between inland Africa and the wider trading world. It was close enough to control a major sea route, but also connected enough to draw wealth out of the African interior. That location turned Axum into a crossroads kingdom, and that crossroads made it rich.
Yes.
I mean, it was a perfect spot. Perfect spot.
It was. All right. So, bullet point number 2. Axum became a major political and religious power. All right. Axum expanded military, minted their own coins, and became one of the first kingdoms in the world to adopt Christianity, strengthened both its political and authority and cultural identity. So my question is, why was Axum's adoption of Christianity important to its political and cultural development?
Hold on, King. What I got how Axum.
Did I change?
Yeah, I got how did Axum's use of coinage and written records demonstrate its economic strength and political sophistication?
Go with that.
Okay.
Go with that question. Go with that question.
Axum's use of coinage showed that it had a strong and organized economy, mainly in the 3rd to 7th century CE. A kingdom does not create its own money unless it has significant wealth, active trade networks, and strong central authority. Axum's mint of coins in gold, silver, and bronze. These coins demonstrate that Axum was involved in regional trade, international trade like the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, Arabia, and India. Coinage helped standardize trade, support taxation, strengthen economic control. So as far as its written records, show political sophistication, especially during the 4th and 7th century CE. Writing reflects administration, organization, long-term governance. They had their written language for royal inscriptions, religious texts, official records. The writing allowed the kingdom to preserve laws and decisions, record royal achievements, communicate authority across the kingdom. Oral tradition equals structured government system. So Axum's coins showed that it had wealth and economic reach, while its written records show that it had structure, organization, and political maturity. Together, they prove that Axum was not just a rich kingdom, but a highly developed civilization that knew how to manage both money and power.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I went back and changed my question because, you and ours kind of blend.
Right.
And so I had a question that was similar to yours.
Right.
And I was like, so I ended up going back and changing that. So I actually just looked through the notes again. It was like, oh, yeah. So my fault, King.
You're right. You're right.
All right. So we have bullet point number 3. Axum declined politically, but left a lasting legacy. So bullet point, although Axum weakened due to trade decline, environmental strain, and changing regional power, its influence continued through Ethiopian religion, culture, and history. So my question is, what factors caused Axum's decline, and why did its legacy survive even after the empire faded?
So Axum's decline because the world around it changed, and its greatest strength, trade, as we see, as we've read through about with all these ancient kingdoms, became harder to control. Axum had grown rich by sitting on major Red Sea trade routes, but that advantage weakened after changes in Arabia, Persia, and South Arabia, and especially the rise of Arab Muslim power in the 7th and 8th centuries, which reduced Axum's access to the Mediterranean trade world. As trade slowed and the kingdom became more isolated, its wealth and influence began to shrink. At the same time, Axum was not only dealing with outside changes, but also internal strain, which is also another key factor in the decline of a kingdom. Rival local peoples put pressure on its frontiers, and some historians also point to environmental stress, land exhaustion, and the loss of direct access to important coastal routes. So Axum did not suddenly disappear in one dramatic moment. It slowly weakened its economy as its economy, security, and political center became harder to hold together. Its legacy survived because Axum left behind more than political power. It helped shape the foundations of Ethiopian civilization through Christianity and the continued use of their written language in religious and literary tradition, and the sacred importance of Axum itself. Even after the empire faded, Ethiopian emperors were still crowned there, and later places like La, La, Labella carried forward the Christian and cultural world that Axum that helped establish. So even though the empire declined, its spiritual, cultural, and historical influence kept living on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I have a bonus question, but I'm gonna scrap the bonus question that I gave you,
Okay.
and I'm gonna just go off the dome because I have a question on. So we're living in 2026, right? Would you rather be living in a time period of then ancient African kingdoms, or would you rather live in the time period we're currently in?
That is I reading these stories, I think about that. I'm not.
Yeah.
I would love to see some of these places because the way they are described. You talk about Cordova, Alexandria, and as these kingdoms, their description is. I would love to see that. So it seems now because we get in history, and I know it's from what they found because we don't have everything. But I would. I want to say I want to go back to see.
Right.
I don't know what that would how to translate to me, but I would love to go back. And not saying it was just peachy keen and everything was gravy.
Right.
However, I know you had to with any civilization, you have your different dynamics and things like that. But I would love to go back. I would love to go back and see some of these places, and maybe even to live. They sound. Again, I know we're getting a piece of it from what we can piece together.
Right.
But it sounds magnificent.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to go back. Me and Musa be best friends. Yeah. We'd be best friends. We'd be shopping all over the country. Like, give me some of that, But yeah, I would. I mean, I'm talking about these monuments and the tradition of things. And, in our reading, I think there's a sense of freedom. It's a sense of more freedom and a sense of more chaos all at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. You don't have, Social Security, you don't have anybody, the surveillance systems and cameras and all that, constantly watching us. You had the freedom to move as you wish. The borders are not like they're set up now where we actually have checkpoints. I mean, you could kind of cross and determine your way. So, but again, you were probably, being chased every day. You know what I mean? Just to survive. You know what I mean? You had to keep one eye open just to sleep in some places, so having that status of some type of royalty or being a pharaoh would have been necessary. I think
Yes.
I could because I can't really grow. I had to shave. I can't really grow a beard, so I think I used to be a pharaoh back in the day
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. No, you're right. So I think too that it seems like like if you have connected to some type of important position or royalty,
Hmm.
that life was in grand as it is to this day, but there was a sense of equality, maybe to
Mm,
some degree.
okay.
It wasn't. You know, it doesn't seem there was so much
It wasn't
pressure.
racism.
It
Yeah, it wasn't
what
much race. It
was
wasn't
no
racism.
racism,
Yeah,
man.
I mean, you talk about the blend, of
Yes,
Axiom and so there was a good blend between the Greek and
yes.
Egyptians, and it seemed like there wouldn't be racism.
It
It
was
might be classification. You
right,
might be in a certain class, and
right,
that class it might have condemned you depending on
right.
what class you're in.
No, that's right. There was no racism. There was no people living next door. It didn't matter you Roman, Greek, or what your skin color was. That didn't
Hmm.
matter. There was the term slave was not even a part of their vocabulary. They didn't know nothing about any of that stuff.
Right,
So I guess it's that part of it that
right,
intrigues me. You know,
yeah,
but to see, yeah, I would like to go back as well.
right,
I
yeah,
think about
yeah,
that when I read these stories and how these places were.
right,
Um, Jeez, man.
hmm,
It's
yeah.
it's insane,
Yeah, and
insane.
and even when we talk about that, it's indigent servants.
Right.
We've read labor enslavement camps
Mhm,
and all that, and when you really get into the root of things, Church Ward, I'm a big fan of Albert Church Ward. He mentions of indigent servants, meaning
mhm.
that if a particular family owed another family money, and say the father died who actually owned the money, where the daughter or son might actually become indigent servant to the family that they actually owe money to. But
Mhm.
again, that daughter or child who was paying this particular fee or payment, through indigent servitude, could actually marry into the family
Right,
and be part of the family.
right.
So it wasn't chains and whips
That's
at
right.
that particular time.
It was something
From what
completely
we
different.
understand, it
That's
was
right. Something completely different, and that says a lot about, how what it meant then into how that had progressed into something,
hmm
horrific,
yeah,
you you
yeah.
know, to these days.
Hmm.
And you see how how evolution from humanity, from a psychological standpoint and emotional and mental, how you know how does that go from that to the place where it has evolved to now?
True.
You can see the evolution of sorry about that, about how it changes. Not saying it was, well, it was from respect, if you will, when you talk about, and how you just described that scenario, into
Right.
now to the whips and change and the
Right.
brutality that came with
Right.
all that, how the mental condition changed, and it just when you
Hmm.
throw in the wealth and the
Right.
power that comes, that you think you have with that, changes your
Hmm.
attitude, and also too, to see everybody draped in gold, and how
Hmm.
just in the mineral, not the minerals, but
Hmm.
the precious metals. That was
Right.
nothing. That was
Right.
nothing.
Right. Right. No. No. Like I said, I feel like there's just a sense of control now where yeah, we still have to go buy gold to this day and go through trade, but it's less accessible. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's less accessible to us now. And then again, depending on that time frame, and it could have been the same way depending on your class.
True.
You know,
Hmm.
um, but I believe too when you talk about even indigent servants, I believe the United States was built on that same premises.
Sure.
When people came to United States, they people who didn't have the money to do so would get with a family that had a little bit more money than them, and would become an
Yep.
indentured servant and have to serve up to 3 to 7 years before they actually got their freedom. And that was
That's
based
right.
upon any specimen of a man or a woman. You know what I mean? It didn't matter what color you were. You know what I mean? And so,
Hmm.
but yeah, I just think that's important. I did, like, again, not
Hmm.
to say that there wasn't slavery going on in Africa at one particular time, because I do believe that. But
Hmm.
in a particular time of these ancient kingdoms, the thought process of slavery was more indentured servitude.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yes,
And
sir.
you're dead on about the Europeans coming this way to America, that was the only way that they could get them to come, was to offer that type of service, to get them to come here. And this was before slavery wasn't acted here in America. So great stuff, King. That was good.
Yes, sir.
That was great stuff.
Yes,
always
sir.
Beautiful. You got that spotlight, King?
Man, you know what? The spotlight today is gonna be you and I. You and I. You and I. I have to admit, I've been so focused on our notes and things like that. I did not present the spotlight today. But again, the spotlight itself is just recognizing people that have made positive influence, on the world, or on the society, on the community itself. And Brother Many Words is doing just that. We are looking to inspire, younger generations, older generations, inspire people to look to your history and really figure out who you are. We've read several books that signify that it don't matter who you are in this world. You know what I mean? You were born of some African descent. And so you need to understand that. You need to understand your foundation, because, I'm a big fan of Marcus Garvey. And he basically states that a tree that doesn't dive into his roots is basically unknown of himself. You know what I mean? You got to know your roots. You got to know where you come from. And once you're able to embrace that, you'd be surprised the expansion of knowledge that comes with that, and compassion and love, because unity would come with that, not division. Knowledge, I believe, brings division. Brings unity, but ignorance brings division.
That's dead on, brother. And so just reading these, taking this journey and reading, I guess you could still have a closed mind. I think that would be hard if you truly are digesting the information and just things that and of antiquity. And I am to everything you just said, that to open up your mind and to digest these things and to see that we are all connected. We are all connected. Yes. It doesn't matter your skin color and how you may take that, let that soak in. But I encourage you, as we always do, to pick up a book, and read these things. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure you're going to be amazed at what you come across. And it has a good chance to change your thinking and how you progress further.
Absolutely.
With your life. All right, King. So to all the listeners, we absolutely appreciate you. We encourage your likes, your suggestions, your thoughts, your questions, your opinions. With this podcast, we were down one today, King Chris. Hopefully he'll be back this Wednesday. So we changed the open mic. It will no longer be at Tuesday night. It will be Wednesdays at noon. Wednesdays at noon, open mic. And we will all be there.
Absolutely. To invite you in. To invite you in. Yeah. Hey, come sit down with us. Hey, go get you a coffee, get on your lunch break, whatever the case may be, get you a smoothie and sit down with us and engage with us. You know what I mean? We're going to have, we have these 5 questions, and we're starting to make some changes too, but we're asking for the community's advice on how we should move forward on some things. So don't be afraid to kind of chime in, text us, email us, or even come through the chat, because we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. All right, King. I appreciate you. Love you,
man. Sir. Love you too, brother. Absolutely.
All right. Wednesday.
Gotcha.